we're going to talk about these inventory tips a little bit in ways that it might help you all improve your own bottom line as well. So, John, you don't look like Kyle. You're much more handsome. Let's turn it on over to you, okay?
Thank you very much. I actually fit in between Alex and John because from the sales point, we're picking it and we're passing it off to get the dispatch done, right? So what we're seeing right now in the warehouses, the biggest issue is because everyone's getting free money, nobody wants work. So that's the toughest part. So what ends up happening? So because they're still in the grind to try and get product put away and picked, they're cheating and they're just putting up product without actually checking it in properly, counting and all that. What happens there? All of a sudden, I thought I had 10 pieces of part A, I have 9, and I got 2 of a different part. So all of a sudden, when I get an order that comes in, you think you've got the inventory, now you're short one way or another. Your other big issue there is if you're not tracking where you're putting it, you're not going to find it. And so a lot of people, if they're not using the proper system to record where you're tracking it, you're not going to find it, or it takes you a lot longer to find it. Because now I got to go back to the actual person who put it away to try and figure out where it is. These guys don't have time. They're already short-staffed. You got to get the product out quickly and then pass it off so that it gets in the truck and gets off to the customer. So that's in our receiving area, and we're seeing more and more people trying to get by, but that's going to bite you because in the long run, your inventory is inaccurate and it's going to hurt you, especially going back to what we started talking about. We're seeing much more e-commerce type orders come in place. And with that being the case, you better be accurate because you're going to end up losing that e-commerce business if you can't deliver. And they'll cut you off pretty quick. So those are some of those segments. In picking orders, smaller organizations, what you're going to find is they typically try and pick by order. That's fine if I got a 5,000 square foot warehouse. Once I start getting into 20, 25, 30, you need something more sophisticated because now if I'm walking the whole warehouse, that's great. I'm really healthy, but it doesn't do anything for my bottom line because I'm only picking so many orders. So typically we like recommending for companies that have a big enough warehouse, or if they got mezzanine, you got to pick by zones. So what you're doing is you're picking multiple orders at the same time, and you go and you get them consolidated in the staging area. Now, again, in this automotive world, and especially now with dealerships and all that, they've grown into this, they never have a very big staging area. So that gets ugly, right? So what ends up happening, everything gets thrown down in there and it's a mess. So part of what we like doing is if we can put them in containers, we track it, you're going to scan the containers. You may do pack verifies before it goes out. And we also like the concept that Alex brought up and also John with the routes. Very important for us. If there are delivery routes, you kind of stage your warehouse and the areas where they put the product so that basically you're building your route. And what most companies do, they try and build from the last pickup to the first pickup. So you load the truck backwards so that it works the best for you. But they do that. They'll also go one more step and they'll create what they call a floor ID. And that floor ID could just be a location on the floor where the orders are kind of staged, or it could be a customer number. If they have big enough stock orders for the customer, they'll create their own separate little floor ID for that. And so you're kind of staging it as product comes down. So the neat thing about this is you're not necessarily picking one order, you're picking several orders, coming down to a staging area, preparing your trucks and getting them out the door. You also have a lot of customers that have either, let's call it your will call orders or hot shots, whatever you want to call, basically people coming in and grabbing their orders because they're in a hurry. Or if you're lucky enough, if you got a shuttle that goes off and drops them off. And there's a lot of companies that do that, where you got a regular shuttle at, let's say 11, at 1, 3, and then you got your night runs. So that's the type of business you can take care of. But now those will calls or hot shots, what we call them are runners. They're basically going out and picking the product. Again, you're trying to steer them as most efficient as possible and trying to pick multiple orders, but depending on what you have as time frames, you may or may not be able to do that. I'm going to go over to another neat little thing that we really started to create now. When you go into a warehouse, you're going to have stuff that people can pick, but then you've got a lot of areas that I can't pick, I need a forklift. We actually create separate zones for that. And what happens is my forklift driver gets those orders or those parts to pick because they're the only one who can pick it. So all of a sudden, we take advantage of the same thing that what Alex and John were talking about. We have our own little airport monitor showing you orders, and you also have charts that actually show you zones. And so you identify your forklift zone so that anybody looking at your screens can actually see, okay, I got 5 parts I got to go pick. I got 3. So your warehouse manager now manages where people are working, what zones to concentrate on, and get orders picked so that they can get it out the door. But everybody's accountable because now I see what people are doing, what zones they're in, what they're working on, and what they're picking. I'll go quickly to another big issue we have always is cycle counts and physicals. Everybody wants to do a physical. Wrong thing to do. It's too late. It's a whole year. You don't have any accurate inventory. You wonder why you're losing sales. What we do is we have what we call our 0 picks or not founds. You got to do them daily. You may want to do them twice a day. You do need to have an inventory control person for that. Again, with the COVID now, it's becoming harder and harder. But if we have someone that does those 0 picks, midday and end of day, so that any orders created afterwards, you're not going to go chase your tail again, looking for these parts you don't have. So doing a proper inventory count for stuff that you can't find makes a big difference tomorrow and the following day. You got a bigger issue there because now if I don't have that product and people want it, I better get it ordered. But at least you fix the problem of wasting somebody's time looking around for it. Moving on, what we've seen in the industry, which always blows my mind, is customer returns. The percentage that comes back is huge. We've heard anywhere between 20 and 25% in the automotive industry as returns. I shake my head because that's just total cost that you're taking back in. Bigger part of the problem there is if you're not putting the good product back in your inventory. So stuff comes in, you're trying to give out a credit, but you haven't put it back in inventory. You've got good inventory you're not selling. And so that's another major thing. Everyone puts it off to the side. It's usually this ugly corner in the warehouse, and you kind of dread because every time you go look there, you go, okay, this is going to be a huge task, but you got to do it, right? And it's big dollars. Forget the one thing you want to give the customer is return, his credit. But if you don't get that good product in inventory, you're losing that sale. And I tell people, you got to do this stuff. So I wanted to hit on a couple big items, different areas of the warehouse. But again, we tie in nicely between what Alex and John were doing because we're the middle there, putting it together.